Hello and welcome to a junior, a senior, actually no, welcome to a special episode in which Rachel and I, we will talk about crosswords. We had planned to talk today about observability, and I hope that episode will reach your favorite podcast listening device soon. But because of scheduling issues, we were left alone and we started talking about crosswords. And I have a lot of questions. But Rachel, please first, who are you and what do you know about crosswords?
In this context, I am a person who recently left the technical field and began to solve the New York Times crossword every day, the Monday after I left Google. And being an engineering type, after 3 months of this, I began wondering, how are these created? And I got into creating them. I have thus far sold one crossword puzzle to NYT Games, hoping for more. And that puts me in a half junior, half senior position in the world of crossword puzzles. So I am going to try to play both sides here.
Nice. As I said at the beginning, I have questions because I'm a hobbyist crossword puzzle solver. We do them from time to time at lunch break in the company I work at currently. And I only see one side of the coin, right? Which is the fun in solving it. How do you transition to going from, oh, I'm solving all of the puzzles to, I actually want to build one?
I will simply share my story. With every crossword puzzle in the New York Times, there is a corresponding wordplay column in which there are usually a short section of constructor notes from the person who put the puzzle together. And these constructor notes can be anything. And one day there was a puzzle I liked, and the constructor, whose name is John Kugelman, he's awesome. He's a programmer himself who works down in Virginia, said something like, I'm in my collaboration era. If you would like to publish a crossword and work with me, and you have a good idea for a theme, hit me up and I'll talk to you. So I decided to shoot my shot. I emailed John, and we went back and forth about theme ideas for the next couple of months. And he taught me pretty much everything I know. The collaboration that we did that first time did not get accepted, but it got me into doing it. It introduced me to some other people who do it. I made some other puzzles. Then I did a second collaboration with him, which did get accepted. So long story short, I accepted someone's incredibly generous invitation, and it turned out that we got along well.
I feel like there is a bit of a parallel with the tech world in the sense that it feels like more collaborative than most things are. Like someone will say like, hey, I'm trying to do that. Anyone in? And I feel like that happens a lot as well in the tech world. But you touched on themes. What's that? How do they get selected? Why themes?
Okay, a theme is some kind of idea or concept that will generally tie together, say, 3 or 4 long entries in an average size crossword puzzle. They will all be puns that are on the same topic, or they will contain within them words that are on the same topic, or something. They will have something in common. They almost always relate to the long entries. And along with the theme, there will very often be what's called a revealer, which is an entry where it says, here's your clue, ... or a different way to consider the entries that are these 4. They really vary. A lot of times it's puns, especially early in the week.
Okay, and how can you make sure that a given theme will be more likely to be accepted?
That's a great question. The times that I've been turned down because of a theme, it's generally been because the theme is not considered kind of tight enough. Either the entries don't have quite the right thing in common, or they're given different treatments in the grid, or it can be something that's too political. I had a really good idea based around Ice Out that I ended up not going with because other constructors told me it would be a terrible idea, so I didn't do it. But yeah, they want tightness, originality. Sometimes, I think right now, if you go to the page on NYT submissions, they say specifically, we have too many Thursdays and Sundays that contain rebuses, which is where there's multiple letters crammed together into one square. So right now they specifically have a call out for non-rebus kind of tricky puzzles. And so a person can also pay attention to what they're explicitly asking for and try.
Because the rebus tricks are actually official, because I've run across them once or twice, and I thought it was occasional or on-the-fly inspiration kind of thing. But from what you're saying, it's like it's a known trick to create crossword puzzles.
Yes, rebuses are a known trick. There is an affordance specifically for entering rebuses in the New York Times Games application on the phone. So it's a known thing. They are usually limited to Thursdays and Sundays, but I have seen them show up on Wednesdays. For listeners who may not know, the week generally goes from easier. The easiest puzzles are on Monday. They continue to get more and more difficult through Wednesday in kind of a normal way. On Thursday, there's probably something really tricky about the theme. Fridays and Saturdays are meant to get more difficult yet, but they don't have a theme. They're called themeless. And Sunday has a theme again. It's intended to be Wednesday difficulty, but it is twice as big in terms of area. And that's how the week goes.
Okay, because again, I'm a hobbyist, so I've done some of them, but I don't do them most days. So I thought that there were always themes. So it's interesting to know that it's certain days that have themes, and it's really like thought out, or at least really scheduled in the sense of these days there are rebus tricks, these days there is another theme, etc., etc. But how does one go about creating an actual crossword puzzle?
Sure, that's a great question. And also, by the way, I have never submitted a theme list because the New York Times has told us that they have a 1.5-year backlog already on themeless puzzles.
Because I'm going to guess those are easier to craft?
I think they are sometimes more fun to craft. The themeless ones are usually, they call it seated around a particular entry or two that is fresh or new or amusing to the constructor or something. And since the entries can be anything, you don't have 3 or 4 long entries kind of pinning the grid down and making it constrained. So I do think maybe they are more fun to create. I have been trying to be published, so.
I get that. And it's interesting what you say of the long entries, because it's true that every time there is a theme, there is like 4 or 5 entries that occupy almost the whole length of the grid and do make reference to one another, right?
Yeah, that's what people try for. But to answer your question, because I skipped it, there's a several stage process to creating a crossword puzzle. I'm going to assume that we are talking about a theme, and I'm going to leave out the differences between a collaboration and a solo one because it's the same thing. It's just whether you argue forever over each stage. So the first one is to come up with a theme. I personally have a document of theme ideas. I think that some of them are pretty bad and unlikely to turn into something, and there are other ones that maybe do have potential. It's hard to tell until you go to the next stage. And the next stage is, here's a theme that might actually have potential. Maybe I thought of 1 or 2 ideas for theme entries. I like it. I'm going to really go search for other ones. So I'll give you an idea that I have that I suspect I'm not going to do. The idea is, what if the revealer was centrist? And I could say, a person in the middle of the political spectrum, or it's a rebus puzzle, and I look for words or entries that have IST in the very center. That would be a pretty classic kind of rebus pun theme. So there are places on the line that I can go and look for every word or entry that has IST right at the center. And I would look at those, and I would probably dump them into a spreadsheet, and I would score them for myself and just say, do I like these? Are they fun? Are they new? Are they fresh? Do they amuse me? Are they a bummer? We don't like bummers. And then maybe, and this is the part where I personally suspect this exact idea will fall apart, I would look and say, are there pairs of these that would fit well in a crossword? Or maybe is there one that's of length 15 that would span the grid? And then maybe there's 2 more that are length 11 or 12 that would fit well into a rotationally symmetric grid. If there were 3 like that, or maybe if there were 4 like that, if there were 2 pairs of the same length that looked good together, weren't too repetitive, they're funny, I could say, here's something that might lead to a grid. So at this point, you have what's called a set of themers. Once you have your set of themers, then you fire up software that helps you actually create and fill in a grid. The one that I like to use, I'll go ahead and pump it because it's fun. I don't think it's open source. I think it's run by this one guy, but it is a free download, and it's called Ingrid. That is a pun, Ingrid. And it has a cutesy little kind of female coded icon, Ingrid. So I fire up Ingrid. I space out my themers in an empty grid. And I say, okay, where are the most annoying letters that I should probably block off with black squares? And over the course of an annoying several hours, I figure out where to put the black squares such that the rest of the grid will be fillable with fairly high quality entries. And it's very nice that Ingrid will just tell me whether this is possible or not, because it means I can usually get to a grid before I fill it in. Now I have a grid. The next stage is filling the grid. And this is kind of a depth first, usually exploration. Ingrid will indicate through color coding where the grid is the most constrained and where it's the least constrained. And it will also show me possible words for each entry. So I'll usually start in a constrained space and I'll say, clearly there's only a few crosses of words that will fit over in this corner. Let me just go see if that's going to turn into crap or if it's going to be okay. And there's a whole thing. You can approve some words, you can reject some words, you can try different combinations of stuff, you can finalize. And there is a whole lot of trial and error. There's a lot of trying multiple different ways to fill the same grid. Sometimes you really have to walk away from something that felt perfect because it just turns into sludge in the far corner. It's very sad.
Yeah, because I guess sometimes there is only a limited amount of ways where you can actually fill that corner, right? And I guess that's why you see so many times the same words or types of words coming back as fillers.
Yeah, that's right.
I feel like "you" is one that comes up quite often. EWE.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And strangely, looking at an empty corner when you're trying to fill it in to create a puzzle is not that different from looking at an empty corner when you're trying to solve a puzzle. It's still the same damn empty corner, and you're trying to figure out how can words possibly fit in here in a way that makes any sense. It's just that when you're creating, you have the software to help you, and you don't have any clues.
Yeah, sure. But contrary to the place you are when you're solving a puzzle, you can go by vibes, right? Because sometimes I see the letters and I'm like, this must be that word, that obviously it's that word, and it obviously is not because it doesn't fit the definition, but it feels like the letters want that word. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is true. So yes, you can go by vibes, but the bad news is when you're creating a puzzle, there may be no solution that you're happy with. At least if you're solving, you know that there is a solution and you know it'll be reasonably high quality because somebody published it, and you know it's solvable. When you're creating a puzzle, depending on your personal taste in entries and so forth, there may be nothing that's good enough for you. So you don't even know. You're trying to see if it's there.
And how often do you have to start over? Like if you had to give an estimate of, okay, I scratch, I don't know, 60, 70, 40% of the puzzles I'll try to start?
Oh God, all the time. I think of the theme ideas I've had. So far, I've actually tried to develop like a quarter of them, maybe. And then maybe half of those will die if I don't come up with enough themers, or if the themers are not the right length. I just can't come up with a good themer set. And then after that, there tends to be a way through. Usually after that, you can make a grid, you can get it filled, you might have to adapt the grid, but between those two steps, if you iterate enough, the puzzle probably won't die right there.
You talk about the tightness of the theme. It feels vague on my end because, like, if you have a theme, you probably, as you said, you have a few themers and let's go. I have the tightness almost baked in, right?
So the English language only provides so many words and so many entries. And so sometimes you really fight. I will talk about my first one ever, which did get rejected for not having a tight enough theme. The theme idea for that one was Hanging Garden, which I really liked. I thought that's a fun vibe. It relates to something historical. There really were hanging gardens of Babylon. It's also one of my favorite Cure songs from when I was a teenager. Please don't judge me. Actually, go ahead and judge me. It's fine. So my idea with Hanging Garden was that you would have some kind of entry. It would be in a cross entry. It would be going along, and then some little bit of it would hang down, and then it would go onward from there. And the part that hung down was supposed to have something to do with gardens or plants or fruits or roots or plant parts. And we did eventually do it. It was very hard. There were about 150 themers that I think we considered at various times. And we were playing with hanging down like the word grass, the word date, the word, all these different words. And so one example of not being tight enough was we didn't want to include both like fruit and apple. One or the other might have been okay, but if I'm going with specific fruits, then it should be all specific fruits. And if I'm going with plant parts, it should be all plant parts. Nothing, no mix of like specific and non-specific. And then there was the problem of I kind of had bits of words hanging from the bit, hanging from a piece of the horizontal entry. And what we ended up going with for the grid was 2 of them where the hanging part happened right at the end of the word, and 2 where they were kind of hanging in the middle of the word. I thought that was kind of good because if it doesn't matter where it's hanging from, then sometimes it'll be at the end and sometimes it won't. Well, the editors considered that a sign of looseness. They would have liked them all to be in the middle or all to be at the end.
From the solver's perspective, I can get that because it feels like sometimes you get the theme. Like if I was solving that puzzle and I get the first 2 and the bit is hanging at the end, I will expect all of them to hang at the end, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I feel like I solved it. And to be fair, it's quite frustrating when then I get, oh, actually I had not solved it. Like, the disappointment of, oh, I had it. Oh, no, I actually don't have it. And it's just guessing.
I'm
right?
sorry. So the editors have saved you from the frustration of solving my puzzle.
No, but I wasn't talking about that one specifically, but it is a feeling that I do get sometimes as I'm solving it off. Okay, I see what they were doing now, but I actually had to stumble onto it because it was too far for me, right? Or it was a bit too divergent or stuff like that.
Yeah, and as a solver, I experience that too pretty much every week.
Okay, I feel like from time to time we have the, oh, come on, no, that one cannot be.
Yes.
Does that happen often? You that do it every day? Or do you get used to that and like you can see the tricks coming now?
I've gotten a lot more used to the tricks. It turns out there only are so many. But every now and then there's something pretty impressive. And every now and then there's a specific entry that makes me roll my eyes. I'm like, oh, come on. That doesn't make sense to somebody who really knows about that area. So I'm a video gamer, for example. And earlier this week, there was a 3-letter entry. And the clue was something like new skins or images for a video game. And I really thought, well, 3 letters though. So for 3 letters, I really thought it would be DLC for downloadable content. And it turned out that the intended answer was mod.
To be fair, like if you had because here we do it collaboratively. And so when we're not sure of what someone else is saying, we will call it Richie. DLC, I would have called it Richie because it's not really, downloadable content is usually larger than just new skins, right?
That is true, but it's not a mod unless it comes from the community. And the way the clue was phrased, it could have come from the original game manufacturer, in which case it's only a DLC. So that kind of thing, I tend to roll my eyes more on individual clues than I do on themes at this point.
I feel like I roll my eyes more at what you call the themers, because they usually have a smart thing there.
Yes.
And unless you're used to them, it feels like the puzzle is playing a trick on you instead of getting you to the answer sometimes.
That is entirely true, and that gets more true toward the end of the week. So I know a lot of people who will only solve Monday through Wednesday every week, for example, to avoid that. And I know people who will play every day except Thursday to avoid that. And I, of course, have been focused on creating Thursdays because that's what the Times says that they need the most of.
Because they are the hardest to create, I'm guessing?
Maybe. Or maybe they're the ones that people have the least fun creating. I don't know. I found them to be the most fun to create because every now and then I have to actually write a Python program to filter my own word list, and that gets me back a tiny bit into hobby coding.
Fair enough. And speaking of that, because you left coding for a little while now, and does it bring the same type of satisfaction of puzzle-like thingy or the solving a problem, like really focused problem solving?
Yeah, that's actually the perfect question, and that is the case. Creating a puzzle with someone else is the closest that I currently have to getting back to that feeling of being at a whiteboard with another software engineer trying to hash out how a system is going to work and how the logic's going to work. And there's a point where a grid will click and it just all falls together and it feels almost like the code just compiled. So there's a lot of parallel to what I used to feel.
How does that collaboration work?
So we go through all the same steps as I talked about already, except there's sometimes people will sort of bat around theme ideas together and develop them. Other times someone will say, hey, I have a theme idea that seems to be up your alley. Would you be interested in collaborating with me on this? And then there is a spreadsheet. We all love spreadsheets. There's a spreadsheet with lots of possible themer entries, but this time both people vote and talk about things and talk about different theme sets. And then usually at grid time, people do not sit down and grid together, I think, or at least I haven't, but people will come up with a grid or part of a grid and fill it in and send it to the other one. What do you think? Of course, the other person will say, oh, well, you stumbled across my pet peeve, which is this. It's like, okay, what if you fix this corner? Can you get rid of this entry? I don't like acronyms, whatever. And that is both annoying and also leads to a stronger grid at the end because you avoid both people's pet peeves. And then people split up the cluing in different ways. This is often the part where I will finally hop on a video call with my collaborator to decide on the clues. Oftentimes, we'll each come up with some clues asynchronously and then just get on the video call to decide whose to use. And that turns into a little bit of back and forth, like, oh, I like your phrasing, but I like this word. Oh, here's another meaning neither of us thought of. Can we go with this?
And that's cool. And so the truly collaborative part in the sense of a synchronous collaboration is really the clue.
That has been for me so far. I'm sure it gets done differently sometimes, especially maybe if people are in person. But it's a far-flung group most of the time. There's a Discord server called Crossword that everybody hangs out in.
Is it also the most fun, the clue writing, or is it the chore you have to get through to actually get your puzzle published?
I think it depends who you talk to. The thing about clues is that is the part that's most easily modified by the editors. And they do. They modify at least around 30% of all the clues that the constructors contribute.
Okay.
And so in a lot of ways, it's low stakes. It's like, well, they're going to accept or reject this based on the theme and maybe based on the fill, which is what we call the rest of the words that are not in the theme. They're not actually going to reject based on the clues. It's just a matter of how many of ours will they use and how many will they replace. So it feels to me like it's a fairly lighthearted celebration of the fact that there's a finished grid.
Okay, because it like, again, seeing it from the outside, I think that's the part where I would have the most fun because you can get creative with less constraints than the puzzle where you're actually constrained by the actual grid and the choices you've made.
That's very true. It's like the hard part is over. This part won't get us rejected. It's just a matter of whether the editors decide to stomp on us, which is their right. So it's low stakes and it's fun.
Okay. And is there a theme that you really, really want to work but haven't found a way yet?
Let me open my document of ideas. I wasn't planning on going here. Oh yeah, that's an idea that I had. I had an idea for what we would call kind of a stunt puzzle. I want to do a puzzle that only uses the letters in the first half of the alphabet. I do have a filtered down word list. I have even come up with a very simple no tricks theme that works. I mean, I'll even tell you what it is because if anybody is listening and wants to collaborate with me and make this happen, please. So the theme is half-baked. And the reason it's great is that this would be half the alphabet baked. And there are a fair number of baked goods that can be spelled out using the first half of the alphabet, including bagel, challah, a few others. In fact, you can make egg bagel. Pretty good.
Nice.
However, I have not yet succeeded in filling an entire 15 by 15 grid in a high quality way because there are a lot of trash entries in that tiny word list that's left.
Yeah, you take away a lot of words, I'm guessing, with that. And
you take
here
away
the
so
problem
many
is
words.
it's more your feelers than your themers, right?
Yeah, that's right. The fill turns into a real problem. So I have not succeeded in that.
Speaking of, how important are the fill words? And are those the ones that are usually in a different language? Because sometimes you will say like two in Mexico City, and it's those, and like, are those usually fillers?
Yeah, I think that is usually fill. There's a lot of, I think this is nice that there's a lot of pretty common words in other languages that have become acceptable to use in English language crosswords. It's really nice. It gives the puzzle a broader feel as far as I'm concerned. But the shorter entries are usually fill. If there's a longer entry that's not a themer, it'll usually be a down clue rather than an across clue. And those are often kind of referred to as bonuses or bonus entries. People do take extra effort to make those sparkly and fun and novel and show some personality. But your question is dead on.
How US themed are the crosswords? Because for us, we live in Europe, and like we live, like my office is in Belgium, so it's mostly Belgian people here. And sometimes it's like candy bar made of blah blah, and that one we cannot solve because we don't know candy bars in the US, right? Is there an effort to not include US things, and sometimes they just fall through, or is it not something that happens?
I hear your frustration. I empathize with it. I would just like to say I am a solver of cryptic crossword, which is British style crosswords. And there will sometimes be a Britishism or a Canadianism. I really like the puzzles by this one guy in Canada that I'll be like, I would not have known that word. I didn't know that meant that over there. But I am personally focused on selling to the New York Times, which is based in New York in the US. And there is not an effort to avoid US specific references. And when it comes to sports, I am just as poorly off as you are. I've been looking up flashcards and quizzes to help me learn what teams are in what cities, playing what sport, and what their like scoreboard abbreviation is. Like, come on. Am I really supposed to know that?
To be fair, those I get. It's more, I struggle a lot with candy bars or stuff like that, where like we have different candy bars here and I'm not exposed to those at all.
Yeah, I'm sorry for that. So the good news is it's almost always Mars, Kit Kat, or Oreo.
To be fair, we do have those. So I cannot even complain.
You just have to learn which ones show up again and again. Like I've kind of had to learn that there's some guy named Orr who's involved in hockey and some guy named Ott who's involved in baseball, unless those are reversed. But anyway, I know they come up again and again. So if it's like some baseball player that I've never heard of, I'll often just try that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I think it's my last question, but and you are more than allowed to know not answer, but it's purely practical. How much does a crossword puzzle sell? Like, is there a rate, or is it something that they say, okay, this is really good, so we pay X, or?
Oh, no, it's a flat rate. So currently right now, the New York Times will pay $500 for a weekday puzzle. And if you collaborate with someone, that's split. So the one that I have gotten accepted, I will eventually be paid $250 for. This comes out to a terrible hourly rate that nobody will ever want to back calculate. Most people don't do it for the money. But a Sunday is bigger and pays $750. You haven't asked how much it costs to get involved. So yes, the Discord server is free, the software is free, but the good word lists cost money.
Oh, so okay, so you're losing money. Basically, what you just told me is not, I might make money creating crossword puzzles. Is I'm definitely losing money if I try to create crossword puzzles.
Since I have sold one, I will now break even. Basically, exactly. I've spent $200 on word lists, and I'm going to make, after taxes, around that. So I would really like to sell one more to break ahead. That hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I'm guessing the word lists are the part you pay because they are the most important part, right? Like the rest of the things can be easily replicated.
Yeah, all the software is free. There's multiple different options, and they all just read these word lists. It's very simple structured data. The word lists are basically just files that will have an entry and then a score, usually between 0 and 50. It's semi-standardized.
And what does the score represent?
It represents approximately some measure of, is this entry in the language? Is this something people actually say? Or is this mutilated somehow? Is it an alternate spelling? Is it incredibly archaic? Is it offensive? Is it something that we don't want in the crossword? So just as an example, something that I really hate because I trip across it every single time is something like R&B, short for rhythm and blues. It's clued as a music genre, and it's like, all right, but it's spelled R-A-N-D-B. I never get that intuitively. I'm always like, what's a rand-B? Oh, wait. So I am fairly sure that that does not have a score of 50. I think it has a score of 40 or 30. It certainly deserves it. But that's the kind of thing where, okay, it's valid, but it's not good.
Yeah, it's one of those that makes you feel bad because intuitively you would have written R-N as the letter N-B instead of...
Yeah, or maybe even the ampersand. Like salt and pepper has the same problem. Sometimes you'll see sand P. I hate that.
It feels bad, yeah. I get
Feels
what you
bad.
mean.
And there's any number of slurs or offensive words or things that, things that may represent something that people don't like. There are actually a lot of crossword constructors who try to avoid Harry Potter references because of J.K. Rowling's public transphobia, for example. So there's that kind of thing, broadly referred to as kind of bummers.
Yeah, so basically you're trying to make crosswords as accessible to as many people and feel good to as many people as possible, right? At the end of the day.
Precisely.
It's an entertainment.
It's all very technical trying to create one, but in the end, it's all for fun and you want people to have fun. So you just try to avoid things that various people won't like.
It's interesting. Like when I proposed that we do this, I did not believe we would talk for half an hour on crosswords. And I think we could stretch out this one for another half hour.
I mean, Pablo, if you have a good idea for a theme, we could collaborate on it. And then you would have about 10 hours.
I have a colleague that I'm sure would have a good idea because he's that kind of person. So I'll ask him and put him in contact with you if he has. And it can be a fun thing to do.
Absolutely.
It's the other side because the closest I've gotten is trying to create Sudoku puzzles at some point in my life. And it's a bit of the same thing of, okay, the process is quite different when you create it than when you do it. But to create it, you kind of have to solve the same puzzle people are going to solve, right?
That's right. You are looking to see if there is a solvable puzzle. Is there a solution here?
Fair enough. I think we reached the natural conclusion of this special episode that will be under the umbrella of a junior, a senior, and we will be quite different. So, Rachel, thank you so much for this really interesting insight into how you create crossword puzzles. It was really, really interesting.
Thank you for giving me this unexpected chance to improvise. If anybody listening is interested, try to find the Crossword Discord, read a book called Crosswordese, and maybe I'll see you online.
Great.